Good evening. This is Miss Vicki at stargardenparenting.com. And tonight our topic is treating yourself and your child with holistic alternatives. And I'll start with my beloved verse. May my soul bloom in love for all existence by Rudolf Steiner. And I'm going to start off by telling you this little practice. It's a Hawaiian practice called Ho'onoponopono, which means I'm sorry, but I say it, I apologize. Please forgive me. I love you and thank you. And the purpose of that little meditation mantra is that every time we fall out of love with someone or anything in our circumstance, when we fall out of that state of love, then it has a bad effect on our health and on those around us. So your spiritual practice in trying to practice virtues of love, patience, compassion, all those fine things will give you more health than any food or anything. So that being said, whenever I notice some feeling of illness in my body, or I can see it in the children, I can see it by the way their eyes look as your first clue. Are they bright? Are they dull? Are they clear? Are they clouded? Do they droop? And their skin color. Is it filled with a soft rosy glow, but not too red and ruddy, which would indicate sensitivities, food or otherwise, food sensitivities to something or other. And how do they walk? Do they have a lively spring? And so on. So when I see something that indicates to me that something's not functioning at its most healthy peak, really what I spoke about last week, food as medicine, is my very first approach. And I try to determine, what's going on. Is it in their sinuses, in their upper part, their head? Is it in their middle rhythmic realm, the bronchitis thing, the lungs? Or is it digestive? Those are the three main areas to look at. And people tend to have tendencies, especially when they're young, like a lot of children have bronchitis or bronchial type conditions quite a lot. So that shows you that their lungs need to be strengthened. But as I spoke last week, really at the heart of it all is the gut, the microbiome, how healthy it is. So anyway, once I have a fair idea of what's going on, then I start to look into what vitamins would be helpful, what minerals would be helpful, and then and it's so easy to research now online. You just look up what's high in vitamin C, or for bronchitis, what's the best natural treatments. And so then I start focusing on those food substances. And I also do supplements because it can be hard these days to get foods that are truly nutritious. So that's my very first thing that I go for. And then I wanted to kind of divert here a little bit and share with you my mentor, Rene Carrito, who is a wonderful man, very wonderful anthroposophist, very wise, and well studied in so many areas. And he taught me this, and it spoke truth to me. And speaking of that, what I want to say is that, you don't have to believe anything I say. You take it into your own heart and see whether it rings true for you. But anyway, Rene Carrito shared this with me, and I found it so very truthful. And he said that there were 4, and I may only be able to remember 3 tonight, but 4 main pathways of medical healing. The first one was from the ancient Egyptians, and that has to do with surgeons and those who use the knife to heal, to cut and take care of what needs to be taken care of. So that's an Egyptian pathway. And the reason I'm telling you this is that we all have our different tendencies also, besides what ails thee, of how we're going to treat. So based a lot, actually, on past lives and past experiences, we will move forward with what we're going to try out. So, you know, people who had very strong incarnations in the Egyptian times will have a tendency to go with the mainstream doctors and with surgeries and so on. Now, obviously, sometimes surgeries are unavoidable, but I think there are more surgeries done than are necessary or helpful. But anyway, that would be the ones who are connected to the Egyptian path. And then there are those who are connected to the Greeks. And the Greeks practiced homeopathy. And homeopathy, which also includes flower essences, but is essentially taking the essence of a substance, whether it's minerals or plants and animals, and distilling in one fashion or another the essential aspect of that substance, called homeopathy. Now, interestingly enough, Rudolf Steiner did use quite a lot of homeopathy, and that wasn't all. He had very wide teachings in terms of what he shared with the medical doctors and what the anthroposophical doctors will do. But homeopathy had a very strong basis, and that being that it's the etheric life realm of the plant and other substances that touches your life stream and can heal you at that level. So that's the Greek pathway. And then, and just to say, also I wanted to note that the royal family of England only is treated homeopathically. Their family has been treated homeopathically forever. So if you question whether it works or not, look how old those queens get to be. That isn't the only reason. And they also have a biodynamic garden. So they're pretty smart about their health. Anyway, then there's the Celtic pathway, which is the herbs. And it's based on the Celtic people, the Scots, the Irish, which I have in my background. So I have a tendency to really love herbs and herbal treatments. And it has to do with your soul being very connected to the elemental realm, the gnomes, the fairies, the unnamed, the sylphs, which I'll talk about some night. Anyway, so the herbal treatments, which also can come in the form of tinctures, which are concentrated herbs. So that's another pathway. And I know I've forgotten one, but it just is not coming back to me. This is from a long, long time ago. And well, to mention also going back a little bit, the Greeks, the homeopathy, there's the cell salts, which are homeopathic minerals, which help you to absorb minerals. It's often deficiencies can be your body not absorbing well. So, but at the basis of all these practices of health is what Steiner spoke about, and he didn't make this up. He got it from ancient practices, and it is the saying, man, know thyself. Man meaning manas, which is the human. Human, know thyself. And so that is one of the chief benefits, really, of using these alternative treatments for yourself. It's really getting to know yourself and know your body. And in early childhood with the children, we say that the most confident they are is when they're very well grounded in their body and they have a lot of skill, both in terms of movement and practical function physically that gives you true confidence. So also it has to do with a really good sense of your body, a kinesthetic sense. So are you achy here? Do you have a pain there? Do you respond to it? Do you know, how do you help that along? And by the way, I would say that one of the best practices, I think, that I love to do with the children is when they fall or they hurt themselves, they get a little poke, or they're not feeling well, I'll rub them and call on the angels and the fairies to heal them. And well, both the angels and the fairies do come on the spot and help you. But above and beyond that, what happens is the child starts to think in a positive mode and to shift into this healing mode. When you spend too much time sympathizing with them and fretting over them and helicoptering over them and bemoaning their pain, you're really programming them neurologically in their thinking and their feeling to dwell on the sorrow of it. And that stops the healing process right there. So for myself, even, I have determined that, and I learned this through spiritual practice, but when I actually practice that, if I fall or I bump myself, and when I remember, if I just rub it and I say, heal, 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 angels, fairies, help me heal, within seconds, the pain is gone. So, yeah, I think it's a good practice, especially with children. And another practice is to let them have their own pains and lack of pains, because we have our own fears and biases as adults. Every one of us do. And I learned this from my oldest son, who was, he moved a lot. And he moved very strongly and powerfully. And I mean, he would jump over big holes and so on. And he would pick up all these little creatures that I'd be like, ooh. But I learned to hold back my reaction and let him seek in the world himself what he was comfortable with. And he's the most grounded person in his body. Hi, Aaron. I hope you hear this. So grounded in his body. It's wonderful to watch him move. And when I watch him swim, I think, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that man came from me, because his movement is so skilled. And it really helped him, I believe, for me to just hold back all my fears and all my reactions. So that's another helpful principle to know with children in healing, because a lot of their little illnesses or, things that need treated are injuries. So moving on to specifics, and I'm going to try to keep this talk not so long tonight. We're all tired, or speaking for myself, I'm tired. Anyway, then another thing that I pay close attention to with when I'm not feeling well, or I can feel something try to catch me. And, well, for one thing, that I live on a farm, and there's a lot of research done that shows that people who live on farms are healthy because we breathe in a lot of poop. You think, oh my gosh, this woman is crazy. Well, it happens to be that at CU there's this team of people that have discovered that the whole earth is coated with a fine, thin level of poop. Now think about it. Birds and mice and bugs, and not so. We breathe in a lot of different microorganisms. We have a lot of diversity on a farm. Not only that, but I've been teaching since 1981 or thereabouts, with constant exposure to runny, dribbly noses and coughs and sneezes and stomach this and, all of that. So my immune system gets a lot of little challenges for my body to come up against and overcome. And that's what helps your body, what helps you to develop immunity, actually, is little doses of this and that and the other, so your body can really learn to know how to defend itself, how to take on these supposed alien invaders in your body. They're not really aliens. As I said before, we're just filled with so many different organisms, way more than the cells of our own body. And the viruses and the bacteria and so on really help to cleanse your body, to get rid of debris that isn't serving the organs of your body. So it does help your health to shift your attitude about the world around you. It's not a dangerous place if you can cultivate it correctly. And understand that our body is self-healing, and It's very, very wise. It's amazing that, science has only really begun to touch the surface of what healing is all about, because it's a very complex thing. So these other things really have a strong effect. How you think, how you feel, what your attitudes are, what your beliefs are. So that being said, I watched the acid and alkaline balance. Now, according to Ayurveda and according to the Waldorf principles, eating seasonally, we are more alkaline or more acidic in the winter, which means I don't eat meat, but for many people, more meat, more dairy, more grains, those are all acidifying. The vegetables and the fruits tend to be alkalinizing, especially the vegetables. And so it's natural for us to need to be more acidic in the winter. It's probably different in a tropical place. You probably don't really have that swing between the acidic and alkaline. That would be an interesting study that I haven't done. But anyway, so we're more acidic naturally. We beef up a little bit because it's winter and we need these reserves to deal with the cold. But then come along spring and the body wants to cleanse. This is something very important to pay attention to for your child and you. The seasons always bring on illnesses, the change of seasons, that is, because it's a change in the microorganism, it's a change in the acid-alkaline balance, and it's your body trying to purify itself. So especially in the spring, our body wants to purify our liver, which is the purifying organ of your body, and the gallbladder, which stores bile, helps out with that process. But your liver needs to be cleansed, and it's the things that grow during that time, the dandelions and all the greens and the fresh things that are coming up, the lettuces and so on, the radishes, so good for you. And so, yeah, that's a shift that happens. And then, as I've said before, shift into the summer with the fruits, especially towards the end when it's all the melons and the peaches and the pears and cherries. Oh, such a delicious time of year. And your body needs that. And then you go into the fall, moving towards the fall fruits, apples, pears also, and the root vegetables. Really, really good for you. So there's that whole shift to watch in your child. And many of us, when our children, like my children, would eat carrots and eat carrots and eat carrots, and then didn't want to have anything else to do with carrots. And I thought, it's kind of odd, but now I realize it's their little bodies shifting between the different states and the different needs of the time and so on and so forth. So acid-alkaline balance is very important. And being overly acidic, now when I say towards acidic, I don't mean overly acidic. Overly acidic is caused a lot by sugar and processed foods and the toxins in foods, the chemicals and food additives. And an overly acidic body is just prime ground for cancer and other diseases. They love to eat acidic substance. And so you want to avoid being overly acidic. Drinking too much coffee, smoking tobacco makes you more overly acidic. So you have to watch that. So that's another factor. And then, so the homeopathy, what I love about all these practices is really getting in touch with your child. That's what I think really in the final analysis heals them, is that you have to truly understand them. And every person deeply wishes to be understood. It's so hard because we're all so different and so unique. But at our very core, we all want to be understood. So let's talk about, for instance, the homeopathy of flower essences. Now, flower essences are mainly used to heal soul conditions, But as I've said to you before, the part of health is your soul and spirit. And so when your child is overly jealous or overly angry or different conditions that just aren't, they're not in a healthy life practice, their health will go downhill if that isn't, if they're not helped through that. The fevers can help them. So just know fevers are very helpful to every human being. And today, someone shared with me when their daughter came through the fever, how they could see how she had advanced, her speech had advanced. And that's just very common. That's what happens. That's part of the purpose of a fever. When they're cleansing their body out, then that organ can function differently and they can speak and listen and move and think differently. So anyway, flower essences, generally I think they say to give them 3 to 5 of them at a time. And so you begin to study them. Now, you know, are they angry or are they jealous? Are they sad? What kind of sadness is it? Are they fearful? Is it known fear, unknown fear? And flower essences is actually based a lot on what's called similars, which also food is medicine and herbal medicines are also based on similars. And what that means is that when you look at the plant, it cues you into what it is helpful for. And so, for instance, for known fears, aspen is what's called for. And if you look at aspen, it's got this unusual leaf structure so that it shivers and shakes on its little stem real easily, and it just quivers. And so aspen is really helpful in a homeopathic substance like the flower essence aspen. And when my middle son was a baby, he didn't sleep well. He didn't go to sleep easily. He had a very sensitive nervous system. And I lived up in the hills by Netherlands and in an aspen grove, and discovered that having him out in his stroller, all bundled up, looking at the aspen leaves was just so soothing to his nerves. It was a wonderful discovery. So that's kind of how flower essences work. I won't go into how they're made, but as I said before, really getting to know your child and trying to understand what is their condition, what do I need to help them with is probably the most healing part of it all. But children respond really well to homeopathics, actually, and so do animals. I always share the story of having these 2 little kittens. They were real tiny. We were on the back porch, and a neighbor that didn't come over very much came over with the dog. And the dog grabbed one of the kittens and broke its neck right there, killed it. And the other little kitten jumped into the dryer vent. And this tiny little kitten is in there just hissing. So I went in and I got the rescue remedy, which is a combination of flower essences, and I sprayed it in there, and that kitten came out of there purring. And you can see that really well with animals, how it works. And with children too, they really actually do respond because they don't have the mental disbelief or, you know, the different things that we have. They just take it and it happens to work. And I see it over and over with rescue remedy, which helps with all kinds of fears and anxieties and so on. So there's flower essences, and the book is really quite a beautiful book to look at and to study and to understand, and really to tune into, you know, what treats what. Like jealousy, I think I remember, is holly, those sharp little prickers. Very interesting that way, especially for a plant lover like me. So anyway, then there's the cell salts, which are the you know, the magphos and the caliphos and so on, the different elements to treat, and they tell you what they treat. And I actually used that one for my oldest son, who frequently had bronchial conditions, even in the summer. And it took me a while to figure out that part of that had to do with getting cold in the night. Because in the summer, his bedroom was upstairs and it would be really hot, and I'd leave the window open, and then he would chill in the night and wake up with a bronchial condition. So helping to keep them warm actually helps a lot in healing. Because when you keep them warm, it allows the body to focus on healing, not on generating warmth. That's why Waldorf is so intent about keeping children warm this time of year. Undershirts, especially the wools or the silks, and layers of vests like I wear all the time, and coats and hats and mittens, because they expend a lot of energy, way more energy than we do, children do. So to be warm, but you don't want them overly warm, and some children overheat easily. And the way I tell if they're warm is by feeling their hands, and if their hands are warm, then we can start to unzip, and but I don't let them peel them off right away, because then if you are a little sweaty and you chill, then that brings on illness. And as I've said before, the Chinese say that illness comes in the back of your neck. So that's why scarves are so good, to keep your neck warm. And anyway, all these things help with healing your child. And the hats, because, the children still, their fontanelle is still soft, even if it's closed over. So they're open a lot to energies from the universe. And we have a lot of intense energy coming in to the earth now, gamma rays, X-rays, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they need a level of protection from it. So I have them wear the ball caps or whatever, and stay in the shade a little bit more too. And just to know, we've talked about how healthy the sun is for you, and that has way more principles than vitamin D. But a very wise anthroposophical doctor, Michaela Glockler, who wrote Guide to Child Health, which is an excellent book to have for a reference to know how to treat your children. Anyway, she told me years ago that just the blue sky is healing. They don't have to be in the direct sun. They just need to get the blue sky, and especially through your eyes. So not always wearing sunglasses, that the vitamin D comes in through your eyes as well. And your eyes, the reason people develop poor eyesight quite a bit, well, besides computers, TV, et cetera, and reading, which is hard on your eyes. Besides that, your eyes don't have a lot of blood supply, and they take a lot of nutrition. So, yeah, you want to take care of them. And obviously, too much sun can be damaging too. So those are the homeopathics that I mainly focused on. Yeah, and if you go to the Vitamin Cottage, they tell you, this one's good for pain, and this one's good for itching, and so on. And you just try them, and you find, but it might not work for you, because homeopathy means that you were incarnated deeply into a Greek time and so it's in your DNA, would be the kind of thing that happens. So then herbs, and herbs I've used since I first discovered natural healing and natural or holistic food. And I had a woman who called herself Mother Earth. She was beautiful. She was an herbalist, and she took me out in the woods and showed me herbs and told me what they were for. And she was the one her simple diet was don't eat white foods, meaning white sugar and white flour, and just eat whole food. And she used herbs a lot. And but you can also use herbs in cooking. And some of you might have seen how when I cook, I almost always put in parsley or celery leaves or cilantro or oregano or any of those herbs. Herbs are interesting because they like to grow on poor soil. They don't like really fertile soil, but they extract a lot of minerals and a lot of life substance from the earth. And they're very, very healthy for you. And different ones are good for different things. Like, I love rosemary because it's very warming and it's very good for your digestion. And you always want to look after your digestion. And then cumin, remember? Oh, cumin. It just warms and warms you. Turmeric. Many herbs are very, very good for you. The peppermints and the chamomile is so good for children because it calms their nerves. So, you can look into it. There are books or looking online and just discovering what herbs work for you and help you. And along with herbs, another thing that I've used a great amount are tinctures and essential oils. Tinctures are concentrations of specific herbs or other substances. And essential oils are the oil that's extracted from the substance. And for your bronchioles, I really, really love eucalyptus. And many of these things, the herbs, the food, the essential oils, and so on, have great properties like antiviral, antibacterial, antifungal, and they seriously do work that way. I've known people who used essential oils to heal one ailment or the other. Now, I've used them just generally. I haven't had any really extreme illnesses to heal, but I use them just in a general way. And the eucalyptus I always take on a flight, and I put it around my neck. This eucalyptus is a smell that, most of the passengers wouldn't complain about too bitterly. And it helps you breathe. And it's antiviral, antifungal, antibacterial. So it's a wonderful healing substance. And you can diffuse the essential oils. I highly recommend John Robbie's diffuser. Really does a fine job. But sometimes I still just boil water on the stove and put the essential oil in it, or we put it in the washing water, the hand washing water, the lavender, for instance. And it's just really good. And when I notice the children have, a lot of running noses or some illness or another is going around, I will put the essential oils in the hand wash water, both for their hands, but they're breathing it. I'm breathing it in. And yeah, it just reminded me of how breathing the pollen of certain plants can be very healing as well. And going into eucalyptus forest is really good for your bronchial tubes. I guess they call them tubes. Anyway, herbs. And then one thing that I wanted to say about all of these things that you can use is that in your family, you'll notice certain patterns and that you're using certain healing substances. And I made the mistake when I was younger of getting all kinds of herbs and healing substances. But when it came down to it, we only used maybe 4 or 8 of them in a year's time. So you kind of focus on what your family's weakness is and what needs strengthening. And by the way, my older son who had the bronchial thing, by about 10 years old, he didn't have it anymore. His lungs had strengthened. Yeah. And yeah, so it's one way to avoid having too much stuff, just to realize that your family will have its little line of things that will help them the most. And then I should not forget to say that it's helpful if you can have a doctor who supports you in this. There's Dr. Adam Blanding in Denver, an anthroposophical doctor. And there's a naturopath up in Lyons. I think her name is Sarah Hart, but I'm not quite sure. And to find a doctor who really believes in healthy practices, not trying to get rid of symptoms, but try to heal the underlying cause. And of course, rest is the most important thing because your body only heals when you're sleeping. Funny, we don't realize that. We think of sleep as kind of wasted time, but it's not wasted at all. The growth hormones get activated during sleep. So the only other thing, well, two things actually, that I'm going to mention is charcoal tablets. And they are wonderful for any kind of stomach issue, food poisoning, just regular stomach flu, um, diarrhea. And essentially when you take them, they are like they just suck in all the toxins in your stomach, and they work very, very quickly. I haven't had to take them myself, but I have given them to others that were having some kind of issue, and worked very quickly, actually, surprisingly quickly. And so the only other thing I'm going to mention is a book called You Can Heal Your Life, Louise Hay. And what that is about is understanding what the underlying, they call it metaphysical, but the underlying thinking and feeling processes are that attract illnesses to you. Because Alzheimer's, for instance, has certain kind of personality types and certain actions. And in my family, varicose veins, and what I discovered about varicose veins, it's a feeling of being burdened. And through Louise Hay and lots of study and inner work, I realized that I had generations of grandmothers who felt burdened, because not me, but they all had really large families. Like my grandma had 11, and worked really, really hard. They were farmers' wives, and they felt burdened. And that feeling burdened slows down your blood, it slows down your movement, and then your veins get clogged up. So, and the healing thing for that is grapes. Aren't I lucky? I have so many grapes here. And think about it, a grape, the vine wanders just like veins, and they actually have the color of the blood. The purple ones do. And very, very good for veins. So anyway, You Can Heal Your Life. And you just go into the book and you look at, knee. What's the problem with your, you have a knee issue. And I don't remember specifically, but it's something about not being able to give direction to your life or something like that. And yeah, and my mom had an illness called Huntington's. And when I looked at Huntington's in her, it was anger and not being able to control others. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was my mom. Anyway, and you can use it, basically you look at what your ailment is, your elbow hurts or your wrist or whatever, and then she's got the mantras to use and the positive affirmations to use. And it actually can be very, very helpful. And you can do it, I wouldn't do it really consciously with the child, but it could be done in a very kind of fun-loving way to help them shift. We bring on illness a lot by our temperament, our personality, our little dissatisfactions and things that bother us. So we can improve our health a great deal by our attitude, our thoughts, and our feelings. So that is all I'm going to say tonight. And it's a very large topic. I could never really do it justice. It's something that you kind of have to approach yourself and see what might work for you. There's so many different things I've done over the years, and I couldn't bring them all up tonight, but really getting to know your child and understanding and observing them so carefully to get to know what the differences are. They wake up and they look sick, and you can see it. It's pretty obvious. So yeah, and often also when children are ill, and probably us too, all you want is just someone to love you and hug you, and children respond to that a great deal. And so when they're ill, best not to have the TV on, the video to entertain them. In fact, that just sucks the healing forces right out of them. But best to just sit and rock them and bring them tea and tell them little stories and have a little sharing. And if they're really young, holding them a lot and rocking, keeping them really close to you, comforting. That's as healing as anything in mom's arms and daddy's too. So with that, I will close and say, hope that you're getting something out of this. So may my soul bloom in love for all existence by Rudolf Steiner. Thank you.